As special counsel, Mueller kept such a low profile he seemed almost invisible. Washington knew most Friday nights as he conducted his investigation. Robert S. Mueller III drove 7 miles from his offices by the Capitol to Salt and Pepper, a dimly lit, mostly empty restaurant near his home, settling into a wooden booth partly covered by a dowdy red curtain. The ritual usually undertaken with 2 friends, a glass of white wine, a plate of scallops and no security detail was perhaps the most public contrast to the way Americans came to know Mr. Mueller in his 22 months as special counsel as a partisan symbol more than a person, his name synonymous with whatever they wanted to believe about President Trump and American law enforcement, their hopes and fears stashed in the pockets of his pinstripe suits. Throughout his investigation, Mr. Mueller chose to remain silent, the rare recluse in a world rife with Twitter battles and talking heads. But now, with the post-report spotlight may prove to be a new test. On Sunday, but inside the church, few congregants took notice. Mr. Mueller, let's put it this way, no unannounced visitors, Preston Sharowney, who runs business operations for the church, said in an interview. It was just a tip. For all the intrigue his investigation has spawned, Mr. Mueller and consummate wasp, whose nickname in government was Bobby Three Sticks, led a secretive but ordinary life, bucking the spotlight that came with being painted as a liberal fantasy or conservative boogeyman. The sightings were sporadic. Around the time, last September, Mr. Mueller and his wife, Ann Standish, were at Georgetown's Apple store, peering curiously into a personal MacBook, just days after Paul Manafort, Mr. Trump's former campaign chairman, pleaded guilty. The Apple employee who fixed Mr. Mueller's computer told a reporter that he was stunned when he walked out of the back of the store to see his newest client. "Come on. I read the paper." In January, as Mr. Mueller closed in on indicting Roger J. Stone Jr., he visited Stolman Subaru in Northern Virginia. The dealership declined. At work, Mr. Mueller nurtured a sense of detachment. As the investigation, when he met with Mr. Trump's lawyers, he entered the room through a digital lockpad and sat in the middle of a conference room table, his investigators seated to his sides, according to John M. Dowd, one of the lawyers. Mr. Mueller, in the absence of interviews and public statements, a rapt public began to search for clues in Mr. Mueller's appearance, turning the square-jawed investigator into a political Rorschach test. His branded base, he is very comfortable in a Brooks Brothers. Garrett M. Groff, a journalist who wrote a book about Mr. Mueller's tenure at the FBI, said in an interview. That carries through. His weekly visits to Salt and Pepper, an aggressively unhip restaurant in Washington's Palisades neighborhood near the gated community where he lives, were often set against the backdrop of explosive news his team generated. As he dined with one evening, Mr. Mueller was eating and talking animatedly at the same time that his spokesman released a rare statement refuting a BuzzFeed News article about interactions between Mr. Trump and Michael D. Cohen, the president's former personal lawyer. Even last Friday, as over what might be included in his report, Mr. Mueller stuck to his routine. Hours after handing, as the official part of the work winds down, CNN driving into his office building on Monday, speculation abounds about what Mr. Mueller might do next, and his office has offered few clues. The special counsel will be concluding his service in the coming days, Peter Carr, his spokesman, said in an email. Mr. Carr declined. He has options. He could sign a TEL, or he could return to WilmerHale, the white-collar Washington law firm where he occupied a 12th-floor corner office in the years leading up to his appointment as special counsel, defending clients such as the National Football League and Sony. 3 co-workers, Jamie S. Gorlick, who worked with Mr. Mueller at WilmerHale, said he was unassuming and wickedly funny as a partner at the firm, giving advice to lawyers on particularly complex cases. If Mr. Mueller, Mr. Groff, who has dined out casually with Mr. Mueller, surmised that he might surprise with a memoir, wanting a last word on his life's work. According to people who have known him for years, taking such a public route is unlikely. Mr. Mueller, Christina C. Argudas, a lawyer who knows Mr. Mueller from when he was a young prosecutor and she was a public defender, described him as too regimented to break course now. "I would bet you my house that you're never going to see him again in the public eye," Ms. Argudas said, unless he is subpoenaed to testify to Congress, which is already a topic of discussion among Democrats. "I think he resumes," Eric Schmidt contributed reporting.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.